My son and I already have 2 full-powered e-bikes. Nice ones, but we don't have a reserve bike. So buying a DIY e-bike frame and building it up with all my leftover components from other upgrades sounded like a pretty cheap yet effective way to have a spare bike. But what happens when you ride it and then you find out that this demo loaner clone bike that you just conjured up out of nowhere starts out competing the other bikes that you tuned to perfection? Your primary rigs are now put in second. This thing becomes more fun to ride up and down. You might have regrets. You might wish you didn't spend all that money on the other bikes and just built your own bikes from scratch. I'd like to make excuses, but now that I know this, I can never unknow it. It's something to be shown to everyone. I initially got this frame because I bought a truck rail, rebuilt the entire thing from the ground up, and had a bunch of spare parts that I could just build another rail up. But you can't just go and buy a truck frame. They won't let you do it. So that means either find another bike on eBay to build up, or you could just go and buy one of these from DIY Carbon Bikes, which is more or less a truck rail style clone version in carbon. Most of it is plug and play. And I'm just going to go briefly through this with you because we already did an installation video from start to finish. This is more or less a follow-up because there was a hang-up in the installation process, but essentially we did all these things from scratch. I'll leave the first video for this in the iCard in the top right up here, and also pinned in the comment section and in the description if you want to view it later. A thing I learned from a while back: if you ride your bike hard, it breaks. And you don't want to be at the mercy of any bike shop to have to get it fixed. Most bikes are pretty serviceable and very easy to build up. Even these e-bikes, with all these extra things, are not that much harder to build up than a standard mountain bike. In fact, it was easier to install most of the major components, like the fork, the handlebars, and the seat. That way you could actually flip the frame upside down or put it like this, and you actually have serviceable access to all the parts versus just dragging the frame on the table. When you take a battery out of a full power e-mountain bike like this and you look inside there and see the interfaces, it looks complicated, like it's a lot, but once you actually put one together and see that it's just a few wires and components here and there, and it's just mainly a hollow frame, it changes your perspective on all of it. This motor was a little bit difficult to install because there were no instructions, so these are where the actual wires go. The power wire is very obvious because of the yellow plug, but the interfaces for the main harness and the speed sensor look exactly the same. So the main harness goes all the way in the very end, and the speed sensor connects right next to the power plug. And that one right in the middle of that void is just a purple connection. There is nothing included in the kit for it. We have no idea what it is. Just leave it plugged so it stays waterproof. This is the Bafang M600. It's got 120 Newton meter of max torque with 500 watt peak output. I don't know what the continuous output is. I know other top leading motors out there have a higher watt out peak, but the Newton meters of torque every time you pedal and the motor caters your pedal, I think that will be something big. If it can generate that amount of torque with only 500 watts max output, then it's definitely worth exploring at least. In fact, I don't know why this hasn't been done by anybody else. Maybe they have and it's just put somewhere in the YouTube vault. Who knows? Regardless, all the wiring harnesses have very obvious places they connect to. They can all be ran one way and fit only into certain ports. You can't mix match them. The less obvious thing though is where you have to run the wires to connect to the motor, and there is a small hole the size of a finger that is right there in the crown that you have to run all the wires through the frame up through that hole leading out to the motor cavity, and then you will just plug those into, as we showed you earlier in the diagram, right into the motor, and then you would install it into the cavity. But there were some problems with this kit. For one, they didn't include a chainstay that attached to the motor. There are 3 holes for it, so there obviously is one made for this motor, but they didn't give it to me. And so that caused a lot of problems because the chain would not stay on without it. So I had to jimmy rig one from the old Trek onto this one, and well, that was sucked, but we did it. I also had to figure out what that cable was for the speed sensor on my own and find it, or I was never going to be able to run the bike. The bike didn't even come with instructions. Thank heaven it was easy enough to figure it out by looking at it, but we were almost really screwed, and this was almost going to be a video about how you should never get this bike. But after getting to the turning point and seeing what it was actually capable of, then, you know, all those things, the fact that we got over those obstacles to begin with, didn't really seem so bad. Actually, when you start to look into what the bike has, it's very unique and inquisitive itself. It has 6 actual modes of assist, so you can very much fine-tune it between each mode. And it also has various display settings at the touch of a power button. It has walk assist. It has everything that you would need in a full powered e-bike like this. Since the F-150e claims to be a trek rail style frame, meaning not an exact clone, but the geometry and the layout and the suspension is very, very similar, to the fact that I could have done a one-for-one swap right over to this bike, with the exception of a few things like that rear shock that I chose to upgrade instead of using the RockShox Deluxe. Essentially, it did look very much like a clone, but it was lighter, which is hilarious because even the full carbon version of the trek rail is not any lighter than its alloy version. This could simply be because the frame is not made as good or as thick and durable as the Trek Carbon, but I will tell you, I have no complaints about how light that bike is. In fact, it's a breath of fresh air. So let's go ahead and show you how it performs. I already did a video about the Bafang motor versus the Bosch CX and Shimano EP801, where I demoed this bike against 2 other bikes, and this is a short little segment from that video. If you want to look more at it, it's up here in the iCard and also in the description, but this is essentially how it went.
Ooh, I really like how this rear shock feels. I didn't even clear that with the other 2, I think. I cleared that with this one finally. Yeah, it's the fastest I ever went up that section. I've got to be cooking it all the time, even with the screw-ups. Yeah, that's Shimano drive. Can't beat that whopping that swooping of the 3 gears at a time. Yeah. This is crazy. This is crazy power. It's preposterous power. Maybe. Oh! I did it! Oh, that's a huge thing. That's huge. I haven't been able to do that in 3 runs. That's so powerful. I didn't even have to keep the seat post all the way up. This is gear 12 shit all day. For somebody else, for you, it's like, yeah, the torque. If you get stopped like that, the torque off the line, so helpful. That's immensely helpful. I'm not even tired. I'm not near as tired as I was when I took up that husk right now. The front tire sucks. I knew it was gonna suck though. But that switched back pretty good. Yeah. Handle that good. Handle this one good. The front tire didn't suck so bad. Washes out every chance it wants to. That suspension actually feels really good. Front tire. See, we don't make the same IQ mistakes that we did earlier. Section. Yeah. Pretty good. Completely failed. but the set is just fine. I had to work the hardest, but I guess gotta put the work in somehow, either up or down. That thing is badass. What a hell of a bike. What? Oh, my mind has changed. It's crazy.